Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. On today's broadcast, I will be speaking about Med for Young People and Sasquatch. Exactly, we are going to tie those two things together. So to begin, I was recently inspired to record a brief YouTube video entitled Meditation for Young People because I usually gear my broadcasts towards adults. I usually aim them for people that are adults. However, the information is universal and it is applicable to humans at any age. And I was just thinking that I really need to promote the idea much more that it is not necessary to come to Earth and press pause on your desires and the fulfillment of your dreams for 18 years. That is not an appropriate assertion. It is much more appropriate to say that as soon as a human comes here, it is effective for them to begin to try to achieve their full potential in terms of consciousness. So this is the next level. Like for many years, I'm talking about in terms of society. If we look back hundreds of years, young people were often not given full human rights. They were treated as second-class citizens. They were seen as not as valued as adults and were sometimes even treated as disposable workers. So, of course, now, from today's vantage point of social development, those values are seen as highly inappropriate. Hundreds of years from now, I hope that human society, whatever it evolves into, looks at this time and the way that young people are treated with similar shock and horror. You know, the idea that young people are not able to guide their own education, they're not able to choose the topics that they are interested in and wish to engage their mind in, the level of mental structure that is imposed upon young people, and even, of course, things like forced vaccinations or medical treatments that young people do not consent to. All of that is very troubling. So this is the beginning of changing Earth's surface human culture and the way that we look at young people. And also this is about balance of consciousness. There are a lot of people that are coming to Earth right now in the form of infants and tiny new consciousnesses, and they are part of the change and shift and evolution of the totality of consciousness that is being manifested here. So to say that, you know, if we were only to esteem people above the age of 18 as adding to the noosphere, that would be highly erroneous. So to begin with, the idea is that there is a human operating system, and I've called it a hacked operating system in the past, in that it is like a computer program that is installed in your organic mind, you know, the actual neurons of your brain, and it is not necessarily functioning according to its original, what I would say, divine purpose. And divine meaning connected to higher consciousness, higher frequency, less dense realms, that there is a source of consciousness that broadcasts or emanates all of the timelines and awareness that we occupy, and that source of consciousness is meant to be housed in our physical presences. We are meant to be conduits for consciousness and to be innately connected to the source, the place that we have emanated from. And it is also the destination that we will return our life experiences to. And when I say return our life experiences, I mean that everything that we're experiencing here is borrowed. Our molecules are borrowed. The photons that we have trapped within our neurology. Oh yes, we have trapped light. When you look at something, you are perceiving photons that are bouncing off of a surface, and they're coming into your iris, and they're stimulating your retina, and those photons are waylaid on their journey. If you hadn't looked around at the environment and absorbed those photons, they would have continued on their journey endlessly A star emanates a photon and it continues its journey endlessly, unless, of course, it interacts with something in the massive world, and that would be like something on planet Earth or something that involves you perceiving it. So you have waylaid all of this photonic energy as part of your system of consciousness. You have mass, which is light that is going slower than the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. You are also light in terms of consciousness that is circulating within the organic computer that is called your brain. And installed in that organic computer is a sense of self, a sense of ego, and the language and structural capabilities that are known as the human operating system. However, humans did not create or incept this human operating system. It was created by otherworldly beings and imposed upon humans. And the evidence that I have for this is that this operating system does not function correctly. If you had a computer or a phone or something like that and you put information into it and then went back to find that information later and were unable to access it, you would say, this computer does not function. However, that is considered to be normal, quote unquote, in this time and place with the human operating system known as the mind. Do you remember every phone number you have ever dialed? No, probably not, unless you are a person who has what's known as an eidetic or photographic memory, or a person who is a memory champion. These are people who cultivate their memories in the way that athletes cultivate their bodies. So there are these very interesting competitive championships of people who have learned to, for example, memorize the order of a 52 deck of cards in under a minute and then reproduce that random order. All of this is done through different devices, it's like, how do you run a marathon? You don't just get up one day and stick on a pair of shoes and just run out your front door. You train in order to do it. So people who have mega memories have trained their minds and trained their memories to be able to handle that cascade of information and store it and access it effectively. So that should be a very good clue that the mind and the operating system, as it is installed, is not effective. It is not able to be used effectively. However, it can be cultivated and changed into a more harmonious structure. So when I say that it is a hacked system, the mind was intended to be a useful tool that would allow for communication and allow for storage of information. I'm also going to reference a time that I call Atlantis, that may be more accurately described as the antediluvian high sophistication world of worldwide global culture. And this was between 10 and 12,000 years ago. There was a cataclysm that destroyed that culture, but before that happened, all of life on Earth's surface, everything that happened on the planet, functioned very differently than it currently does. So we currently live in a much denser realm, and the genetic code of the bodies that we use has been changed. It has been shifted from the format of the genes that were in effect, like, let's say, 20,000 years ago. And the way that this body operated when its genes were whirling and twirling and being coiled in a different format and dancing and do-si-doing with its genetic partners on a molecular level, the genetic material used to act and behave differently. And so what would be defined as human then is what people now would call superhuman. So back then, death was the aberration. Death was not normal. Nobody died. Everybody ascended. So you came into the physical body, lived in a state of total health and a state of total connectivity with the source of consciousness, and broadcast in real time your experience of being here in this level of density and using dense matter. And then at the end of that trajectory of consciousness, when it is time to return all of these borrowed items back to the source, then one would ascend, or take all of the physical molecules of the body and use it as the fuel to transport and transform consciousness to the next higher level. This is also what I have described as the quantum leap, the jump of an electron from a lower level of excitation in the atom to a higher level of excitation. And it is a jump that happens in one increment. It cannot be broken up into smaller increments. That's what the idea of quantum leap means. It means gather your energy, save it up, quote unquote, in the bank. Then when you have enough energy to, quote unquote, move or relocate, you're able to leap to the next level. In traditional death, there is decomposition of the body, and this is a very slow state change. And when I say state, I'm talking about states of matter and energy. So, we have solid, liquid, gas, plasma, beam, and below solid, there's the Bose-Einstein condensate, which I will not get into for right now. The idea is that when the body decomposes, because consciousness leaves the body, there's no longer awareness, so there is no longer the connective matrix that holds together cellular life. And cellular life begins to devolve into its various elements. That process is a change of state from solid eventually into gaseous and non-physical matter. However, it is a slow change of state, and it usually involves other animals or tiny organisms such as insects and bacteria and molds that decompose and putrefy the body. There's also cremation, which is an instantaneous state change. By the addition of heat, you're adding energy to the body. You can cause it to go from being physical matter to being energy that is like caloric energy, heat, infrared energy, and energy of pure consciousness much more quickly. Think of ascension as a flameless transformation. Like if you were to place your physical body right now on the surface of the sun, you would be instantaneously vaporized. We could not even call it burnt, because your body would change state from being physical matter to being gas and superheated plasmas almost instantaneously. This is not even analogous to, this is a literal explanation of what would happen if you, in your present state of consciousness, were exposed to the full force or the full depth and breadth of what solar consciousness and stellar consciousness is. It's like plugging directly into the power station. It would absolutely overwhelm your neurology. It would overwhelm your consciousness at this level, unless, of course, you cultivate your consciousness throughout your lifetime. If you are able to create a coherent light body and cultivate your consciousness, and when I say that, both of those terms have to do with organizing the light waves of your non-physical energy presence. And what that feels like to you as the observer-perceiver is that you will no longer have the mental detritus. All of these thoughts that we have all day long, they're friction. You could think of all of these thoughts as like tiny little pieces of debris that are in a debris cloud orbiting around you as a planet. Every single one, like there's a debris cloud literally orbiting Earth. It's made up of tiny little pieces of junk. We could call it space junk. And satellites and the International Space Station have to be concerned about little tiny pieces of space junk moving at thousands of miles per second and puncturing their equipment. Well, you have similar, space junk that's floating around your energy field. And it's a combination of emotional residue, thought residue, belief system programming, and it happens because of the context within which we are submerged. So it's like saying your engine is not running clean and there is residue or pollution that exists around you. It's not your fault. in Atlantis, in this antediluvian time, pre-flood, we had much cleaner burning engines. And so there was not this debris cloud that separated one's consciousness from the source. And the debris cloud is really created by the hacks or the changes to the human mind operating system. Those changes, just like when a computer system is hacked, it is meant to give access not to the user participant, not to the person who owns the computer, but to someone else. So it might be the company that makes the software, like Microsoft, or it might be some nefarious criminal conspirator, an actual hacker, a person who shouldn't have authority over your computer, and yet they do. And that is what the human populace on Earth's surface is experiencing right now. Beings who should not have access to your mind have access to your mind right now. And it happens through a combination of genetic scrambling, like the genetic code that has been changed from what it should be in, mental programming, belief system programming, religious programming, school programming, exposure to chemicals, and those chemicals are sometimes in vaccines, like the mercury that's in vaccines. It's sometimes pollutants in the air, such as the exhaust plumes that come out of jets, and also coal-fired power plants. It's also radiation that is in the environment. It is also food pollution. You know, a lot of food is polluted with glyphosate, the Roundup herbicide, and also the Bt toxins themselves. And think about this. The fact that an organism has been genetically modified, it states in the title, its genes have been changed. And the reason why your mind doesn't act the way it's supposed to act and be a perfectly clear conduit for your consciousness to essentially talk to the divine source all the time is because of the changes to the genetic code. So the genetic code as it stands, or as it stood before the creation of the flying rainbow lasagna, is not the way it's supposed to be. It's a scrambled egg, it's a mess, it's an unfurled sweater that's not knit into the right patterns. However, there is hope. The sweater can be re-knit, and that is what I'm here to do. I model that with my own body. It's like saying, I came here, I moved in, I took a fixer-upper house, and I remodeled it into what it actually should be. So this is speaking about now what the human body actually should be, or how it actually should operate. We are meant to be clean burning engines, quote unquote, that eat nothing but pure light. I currently eat light, and I also supplement that with physical matter because I understand that we are in a transition. We are in a cosmic moment, this moment of changing over from the world that we are coming from and moving into the world that we're coming into. It's a moment. It's happening now, and according to the cosmic timescale, a cosmic moment can last for many years, decades even. So, of course, I'm a walk-in. If you, 20 minutes into this broadcast, if you don't know that, that's where my information comes from. That's where my personal experience comes from. Yes, I'm a walk-in. And when I first came into this body, I didn't know the rules of this realm. I tried to eat nothing but pure light, and I didn't understand that we are not at that level yet. And that's because of not only the physical pollution, but also the electromagnetic pollution that exists right now. I'm talking about Wi-Fi broadcasts, radar, satellite broadcasts, anything that produces a wave but does not conform to the harmonic structure of consciousness in the cosmos. So to contrast, the Great Pyramid at Giza, tens of thousands of years ago, was a broadcaster of consciousness. And what it did was utilized the, what we would say, natural wave pattern. The wave pattern that I call the symphony of the cosmos, because there is an order, an orderliness to the wave pattern in the same way that music or a symphony is not mere noise. What distinguishes music in our definition from mere noise, like static, the noise of static on the radio, is that music is harmonically arranged. And I'm speaking now about what I paint in my paintings and what I do when I control my voice and create vocal overtones. Harmonics, the harmonic structure. We are meant to conform to that harmonic structure in the flow of energy that is our thoughts, in the structure of our thoughts, which is our belief system, in the structure of our physical body, that's our cellular structure, and in our behaviors throughout the day. It's like saying, what you have this body, that is your vehicle or your equipment. What do you do with your equipment throughout the day? That also should conform to this harmonic structure. And I will tell you also that your body was not created to sit within a cubicle behind a desk underneath fluorescent lights in front of a computer screen for 8 hours a day. That is the end result of an equation that involves this hacked operating system, that humans did not design for themselves that life and that level of consciousness. So I am here to model a new genetic format and a new way of living, not only a new way of using my body, but a new way of living that is much more creative and in harmonious alignment with the structure of higher consciousness, and to offer that as an option to other people that are here. And it's like saying, this is a new dance step. I certainly hope it will catch on and many other people will begin dancing along with me. And the dance is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagne. I want to rewind a little bit more though and go back to the idea of meditation. That meditation is the pause button for your human mind. So when a child is born here in this realm, over the first 3 or 4 years of their life, they gradually experience the installation of the human operating system. And it's called learning. It's called neurological organization, and it allows humans to interface with the rest of society. If you come here and you don't learn that interface, and especially if you don't learn it within the first couple of years of your life, you are considered to be deeply flawed. Deeply flawed equals developmentally disabled, a person whose mind does not work or function according to the parameters and social expectations of this time and place. And it's really, truly fascinating that there are many people now that are being diagnosed on the spectrum of autism as having a mind or a system of perception that is not neurotypical, that does not conform to society's expectations of how one's neurology should function and how one's perception should function. So people on this spectrum might perceive very differently. They might be hypersensitive. Sounds that don't bother an ordinary person would very much bother a hypersensitive person who has this autism disorder. However, so many people are emerging now with this disorder that we really have to wonder what is happening. And my understanding is that the human frequency is changing. This is like saying your genes, your genetic material, your DNA are like a radio tuner, and they allow you to tune into a specific broadcast of reality. And I will tell you also that people who are hypersensitive, who might be in the autism spectrum, I consider them to be very sane, that they are showing the evidences of what is out of balance in our society. So, for example, if a person with autism goes into a big store like Walmart that's filled with lots of fluorescent light, lots of phthalates and chemicals that are coming out of all of the packaged goods and the plastics that are in the store, is very loud, and if that person eats processed food, like that's a preparation for just the perfect situation for a consciousness meltdown that really no human neurology should be exposed to that context. It is inherently unhealthy. Sasquatch would avoid that context like the plague, quote unquote, or like a cliche. Sasquatch would never go into those environments because Sasquatch is the ultimate in hypersensitivity. It is an actual organism that exists on the border between the physical realm and the non-physical realm, and is relevant to this discussion because Sasquatch is an organism whose genes were not trembled or squashed or degraded in the fall, in the change of culture from Atlantis to what we presently experience. So we're talking about an actual organism, but which has been on Earth's surface, but which has not lived according to the limitations of the density of this realm. So Sasquatch has been a being that can walk between the worlds, to be in the realm of pure abstraction, the purely psychic realm of telepathy, consciousness expressed through thought but not through the body, and also being expressed in physical matter. So the physical body of a large, humanoid, two-armed, two-legged, one-headed being that can run around in a redwood forest, that container for consciousness has a different genetic structure than the container that you and I are presently wearing. I'm presuming that Sasquatch is not listening to this broadcast because Sasquatch does not get podcasts. Sasquatch lives, first of all, they're a network of consciousness. They are all connected to one another as brethren or family members. They are not lonely because it's like having a cell phone. You can call your family at any time. They talk with each other all the time. They're so psychically sensitive that just coming near a human city is like smelling a really bad odor. It's like, oh, what's that stench? Ugh, uncontrolled human minds over there. And again, this is not to sound condescending in any way. It's almost piteous. It is much more empathetic or sympathetic, let us say, that beings who live at this level, their minds are very pristine. They are not exposed to what would be considered the dark side. Things like pornography and greed and lying and stealing, and think about just the things that happen on Wall Street as part of daily business. Those thought structures literally release a toxic smell that beings such as Sasquatch would never wish to expose themselves to, because we are always marinating in our environment. This is also the lesson of why I came here as a walk-in, and why and how I exist as a model for new genetic dance steps or movements with my DNA. We are all constantly affecting one another through our vibration. This is also the analogy of being in a symphony. When you're in a symphony, you're one musician and you're playing your personal instrument, and everyone around you is also a musician playing their instrument. So you have to, being a good musician in life means being perceptive and learning to listen to others and saying, am I playing the right notes at the right time? And also learning to listen to the conductor. And I would say the conductor is analogous to the source of consciousness. The higher consciousness broadcast that says, think this, do this, go here, make this. So domesticated human society, which is what Earth's surface culture is the antithesis of being wild and being tuned in to the divine consciousness connection that tells you what to do at all times. The closest thing that Earth's surface human society has to that state of living is to be a visionary or to be a monk or to be an artist or a musician or a person who's deeply immersed in the creative process. A person who is doing that is focusing all of their consciousness on connecting to creativity, connecting to meditation, and their boss, quote unquote, is higher consciousness. Their boss is not a social or economic policy that they must work for, quote unquote, or use their thought structure and belief system and mind and body and spirit during the day for. which is what work, quote unquote, is. This is the domestication of human consciousness. Do you know that you've been domesticated through the educational system, but first through the hacked operating system? I did this on a broadcast not that long ago, but we learn through repetition, so I'll do it again. The difference between dogs and pigs. There's a genetic difference between dogs and pigs. So humans have domesticated animals. Humans have controlled and shaped the breeding and the genetic expression of character traits of animals. And humans did it for their own convenience. Humans wanted wolves that were easier to control than regular wolves, so they bred them in order to be that way. And part of the contract between humans and the newly changed wolves or dogs was, you listen to me and I take care of you and feed you. And that's written in the code, in the genetic code of dogs. Dogs understand, I am supposed to listen to my human master, and if I do that, then I will get food. And to contrast this, months ago in the spring, we have a neighbor who is keeping some actual literal pigs, like hogs, and they escaped their enclosure. They came up and totally ruined my garden, but don't worry, it was all replaced, so it's a happy ending. However, in that experience, I got to directly interact with pigs, something which I have never done before. And of course, I spoke with them verbally and I spoke with them telepathically. I found them to be highly intelligent, highly perceptive, and totally not obliged to listen to me as a human. They understood my requests to leave my garden alone. They understood my commands to leave the premises immediately, and they gloriously disobeyed. They looked at me and they said, we do not have to listen to you at all. Pigs have not been bred for domesticated obedience. They've been bred for the capacity to gain weight quickly and thrive off of garbage and taste delicious when they're eaten. So they have a different genetic contract, a different social and consciousness contract with humans. Now I'm going to bring this analogy around to humans. Human genetic code has been changed from what you are and were as wild or undomesticated humans into what you are now. And humans presently have a genetic program or setup within the code on a deep foundational level that says it is appropriate to have an external authority figure such as, quote-unquote, God with a capital G, the Lord God Jehovah, a Lord, a president, a leader, mommy, daddy, Obama. It is this program that one should listen to an external authority figure, a boss, instead of listening to your own innate divine connection. It's a foundational change and shift on a genetic level, and it is what changed humans into what they presently are. Because once you make your focus for consciousness not the source, when you take your attention away from the source and place it on someone or something else that is less than the source, you're giving all of your power and authority to something that is less than infinite. Instead of tuning into an infinite broadcast of higher consciousness, you are tuning into a degraded broadcast. And the structure as it is expressed in human society right now states that you must have a boss, like you must wake up in the morning and go to your job at 9 a.m. or go to your school. At your job, your boss is your boss. At your school, your boss is your teacher. Going to school is like breaking children, the way that horses are broken for the saddle, so that you are prepared to go to your lifetime of employment. And of course, if you wish to be connected to the source, you may do so in your off hours when you have completed your commute home and all of your daily chores of making food and cleaning your house and taking care of your family. Then and only then are you allowed to listen to your own innate divine connection. It's called free time. Literally, You're only allowed to be free during a tiny fraction of your life. Or we can stay stated as this, that during the Monday through Friday work week, you are not free, and Saturday and Sunday, that is when you are allowed to express yourself freely. And of course, this sounds quite ridiculous when I put it in those terms. However, it has been accepted as just a normal setup of society for a very long time. So this is part of the change in the shift in consciousness that is happening right now, that Earth's surface human society is changing, and the profound change happens when one ceases to place one's attention on an external authority figure, be it religious or political or ideological, and instead place it internally. Place your attention on your internal divine connection. And that is what meditation is. It is nothing more magical or mystical than the very magical and mystical and profound action of returning your consciousness to the source while you're still in the flesh. Because according to the setup that we've been experiencing for thousands of years, that is actually an aberrant or not intended setup, humans have been cut off from the source during their daily waking consciousness because of the constant verbalization of the hacked operating system known as the mind. The mind is always talking, the mind is always chattering. And it is only during sleep, when you're unconscious and your mind stops chattering and your mouth stops moving, or if you're able to sit in silence and still be conscious, which is what meditation is, that is when connection to the source resumes. That is when cellular vitality and cellular repair happen. This is why sleep is necessary. Most people do not control their minds. So during the day, the mind is blabbing and talking, using energy, creating friction. It's causing aging. Oh, if you don't understand this yet, I hope it is becoming clear. The verbalized conscious mind is what causes cellular aging. And first of all, I recorded this meditation for young people video that's available on YouTube because I'm understanding that young people are aging, but this is not normal. It is not normal for a 6-year-old to have boundless vitality and be flexible in their legs and in their hips and be able to, run and jump and do cartwheels, and then by age 18 to not be able to do those activities, or by age 18 to require a cup of coffee to wake up and get out of bed in the morning. But that is the sad reality for many young people in this time and place. And it's not normal to simply grow out of shape and obese as you grow older, as you grow chronologically older. It is not normal to develop the need for corrective lenses in your eyes. That happens because of the way that we are asked to use our eyes. I'll go into it very briefly. This is from the early 1900s. Research done by Dr. Bates, B-A-T-E-S, developed the Bates method of eye exercises after research into the Inuit community when it was pre-literate. So this is early 1900s, the far, far north. The traditional native people there never needed eyeglasses. They did tons of close-up work like beading and stuff like that you need to have great eyesight for. They were able to see far distances for hunting. They only developed the need for corrective eyeglasses when they started to become literate. And Dr. Bates found out it is because of the tiny eye muscles that surround our eyes. We don't actually focus with the muscles of our lens. We actually focus with the muscles of the what holds our eyeballs in its socket. And that cognitive dissonance and stress make those muscles stiffen and create an elongated shape to the eyeball so that essentially you're constantly focused on what is far away and not what is close. It's a stress reaction. It has to do with fight or flight, like I have to look around outside of me and see things that are far away because I have to see if there's danger coming. And asking humans to read produces this stress reaction. Reading, on its basic fundamental level as we presently have it, creates cognitive dissonance. Literacy creates cognitive dissonance. So first we have the difficulties of implanting the verbalized mind, the capacity to understand language, and that is very different than how we used to use our minds when we were purely telepathic, because it was not necessary to use the flapping of my moving mouth parts to ask for basic, simple, practical things like, please pass the ketchup. Sasquatch is able to ask its fellow Sasquatch brethren to pass the ketchup without flapping its moving mouth parts. However, they do not eat ketchup. It's a moot point. But if they need something, they don't have to say it with their mouth. They say it with their mind. Learning to control the mind that we currently have is the first step towards retrieving our higher levels of awareness. So it's also stating that we are not able to connect to the source to get ideas when our mind is constantly verbalizing. It is also very difficult to send back our life experiences, our real-time broadcasts of what it is like to be here in this time and place in this body. So to give a brief example, I was walking through the redwood forest yesterday, but it turned into a little jog, and the sunlight was slanting so beautifully through the trees. I felt a wonderful connection to earth. My body felt strong and healthy, felt exhilarated, and I was really beaming out this broadcast of what it's like to be me in that moment, because I was feeling so happy and so lucky to be me. I was thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone could feel how great it is to be me in this moment? And that is, it's a peak moment for me. That is what we are here for. We're supposed to be that way all the time. That we are given this vehicle, this body, this tool, in order to have experiences. And we're supposed to use it joyously and as an instrument, keep it quote-unquote in tune, and send back our experiences of using this instrument and using this tool as we're here, not after the fact, not completing the movie and then writing a review and sending it back to the source, but telling the source, while the movie or your life is going on, this is what I'm experiencing, because that also allows the source to change and rewrite the script if something isn't going quite right. The fact that people are constantly verbalizing, and that we verbalize due to stress, and that we verbalize more when we feel stress, cuts us off from the source when we most need it. And the examples that I have of people cutting through all of the static on the line and the verbalizations usually happen in moments of great duress, such as a near-wreck car accident. People in those moments, they are not thinking, move your hand to the brake, move your foot off of the accelerator. You do not think in conscious, verbalized, literal thoughts in those moments. Sometimes people report that time slows down and that they have perfect clarity, and sometimes there is just the sense of release or surrender or letting go. It is essentially letting go to one's higher self, and for the moment not using the hacked operating system that is the mind. And it can literally be a life-saving maneuver for a person to do that, because it's like sending out an SOS signal to the person who put you here, the source, the star that you came from. It's saying, hey, if you don't do something in an instant, I'm going to get squashed against this Mack truck. So in those moments of clarity, you're able to broadcast back to the source and say, do something quick, change the scene, change the tempo of the symphony. And the source is able to do that because the source emanates timelines, possibilities, and probabilities. And being in divine co-creative partnership means that you say, this is what my experience is like, I need this to change or be fixed, and the source says, I am going to now send you new energy. Let's call it, quote-unquote, a software upgrade. And these happen when you absorb sunlight. Go out into sunlight every day. Expose your forehead to the sun. You don't have to physically have your eyeballs open, but you are connecting your inner eye to the sun, and also connect yourself to earth. Earth is a part of this divine co-creative partnership. Coming to Earth is not intended to be a de facto, perforce, separation from the source or from the stellar network. It has become that, and then the idea of consciousness being here, let's say trapped in a shadow, constantly cycling, constantly running on the hamster wheel, but without effectively learning, because we're not here within a perfect didactic situation. We're not here within the schoolhouse of the cosmos, which is what we're supposed to be, here in a perfect realm where what you send out comes back to you without distortion. You would be able to learn everything that you need to learn. However, we are living in a fun house, an aspect where consciousness is distorted because of the hacked operating system. What you send out can come back to you in a distorted or diminished or entropic sense. Also, what you are perceiving might be perceived through layers of distortion, and all of that makes it more difficult to learn. So, we do a great disservice to young people when we bring them here as children, teach them language. Mothers and fathers spend so much time teaching their babies how to talk and consider it a very wonderful, positive thing, and never teach them how to meditate. And of course, I'm speaking from the cultural paradigm of the United States. Things are a little different in the Far East, where it is more common for young people to go into the monastic structure and for young people to learn about the value of meditation, because it is a Buddhist society and meditation is more prevalent there. And I've seen beautiful photographs of thousands of children in Thailand gathering for organized meditations for peace. And this is what gave me the idea that here in the United States and in Western industrialized culture, it is so essential for our educational system to include the idea of mental peace and mental sovereignty, and learning to turn off the verbalized mind in order to access the more numinous mind, the mind that is connected to the unstructured, abstract reality. Because that is the reality that we have actually come from. That is also true reality. And when we are in bliss, when we are engaged in an activity that gives us bliss. So for me, it is painting. It is also when I'm, playing music and I'm really in the groove. Not necessarily when I'm first starting learning a song when it's a little clunky, but when I've practiced a song many times and I'm really grooving. Or when I'm taking a little jog through a redwood forest. Times when my conscious verbalized mind is on pause and I'm in the moment fully. I'm not thinking about the past, I'm not thinking about the future, and I'm fully connected to my senses. Those moments, first of all, that is what we are really here for. That is when our apparatus is fully functional. And this is what I would like to teach young people, and of course this is a teaching for all ages. We should stop making the distinctions based on mere chronological age, because there are also a lot of young people that are coming here now that might only be 3 or 4. However, their consciousnesses are highly evolved, and they are here to teach us about how to meditate and how to cultivate inner peace and how to live in a more harmonically structured way. I said earlier in this broadcast that living in conformity with that harmonic structure of consciousness includes behavior patterns. When we work for an earthly boss, your earthly boss says, go to work at 9 a.m., sit here in this chair, and do the tasks that I tell you to do. However, if you are an artist, or if you are a meditator, or if you are a long-distance runner, then you do what your inner divine guidance says. It might say, it is time to go out and run 15 miles, or it might say, it is time to practice a piano sonata, or it might say, it is time to paint this particular painting. And I'm my own boss as an artist. If I'm bored on a project, I say, I don't have to be doing this. I can choose my projects. I can choose what is really fun and interesting to me and what is blissful. So by being connected to my own innate divine higher consciousness, I am able to navigate reality on a moment-by-moment basis that is comfortable and fun and energizing. I endeavor to cultivate peak moments where higher consciousness is experiencing life through this physical conduit, because it can be so magical to be here. And it is a wonderful gift, I will tell you. Many people who were born into their physical bodies, I'm a walk-in, so I really value being here, but many people who were born in don't necessarily value what they have, and the human social structure here greatly devalues being human. It is not created by humans or for humans, and it says being a human is not that cool. You have a body that burps and farts and has all these things that have to be groomed and cleaned on it, and you're not a perfect person like an angelic being, and angels are clean and perfect. And I'm here to tell you that that is far from the truth. That the human physical form is an amazing vehicle, and we do not require anything more fancy or sophisticated than this physical body in order to achieve what I have described as ascension, the raising of our physical body vibration to the next level of consciousness. And when I speak about Sasquatch and I speak about Atlantis, you can think of them as mythological realms or mythological beings. You can also validate the imagination and the imaginary realm as a very real place. To understand that your imagination has also been devalued. I like to say the imagination is the most powerful muscle that you have on your body. And it's true, because each one of us, no matter how big and giant of a muscle person and bodybuilder you are, each one of us will eventually reach the limit of our strengths as an individual. You will find a rock that is too large for you to lift by yourself, and you will then have to use your imagination. Your imagination might be, I'm going to imagine that another person comes along and helps me to move this rock, or maybe a giant moose comes along and pushes it away with his antlers, or an elephant helps me to move this rock. Or my imagination is, I'm going to build a contraption, maybe a simple machine like a lever on a pivot, and move the rock using that. This is what I mean by our imagination is so profoundly powerful. Imagination is the use of the creative life force in divine co-creative partnership in order to create what we need in our reality. And I tap into imagination as part of my creation of visual arts, as part of my expression through music, and as part of these verbal broadcasts. It's ironic because I use words and the flapping of my moving mouth parts to quite often decry the necessity of so much constant verbalization. The idea is that the words and the information that I'm bringing in these broadcasts are aligned with, or is aligned with, the harmonic structure of consciousness that is greater than my mind. So my mind is a tiny fractal element within a much, much larger mind. And I am matching my consciousness, matching my vibrations, matching my ideas to that higher structure. And it is all being translated through this particular body in this particular time and place with this particular anthropomorphic filter of social and cultural conditioning and language. It's the translation, translating it into what can be perceived and understood by people in this time and place. So in this cosmic moment, as it is unfolding in these next decades, our individual bodies and the way that Earth functions as a body will change and shift. and we will become more eaters of consciousness and of awareness and less eaters of physical matter. And this is already beginning when people are understanding that food affects your mood, and the quality of food is more than mere caloric content. So you can have a stick of processed butter from really sad cows that were only fed GMO processed soy, and it's 1,000 calories. And you can also have 1,000 calories of fruits and vegetables and non-processed, nuts and nut butters that are all organically grown and, when I say unprocessed, let's say as close to their original format as possible. Those two meals, 1,000 calories, both equal, or sustenance for a day, they are not equal in terms of your mind and your consciousness and your mood. That you can certainly live eating just purely processed, Crisco or hydrogenated fat. However, that will not give a person the aspects of inner light that are required. And people are understanding this now, that eating organic and if you eat animals that are raised in a cruelty-free environment. This means chickens should be allowed to walk around and peck at the ground. They shouldn't live in tiny cages. Same thing with hogs or whatever. I'm lucky I live in Humboldt County in California. We have wonderful grass-fed beef that is here. We have wonderful eggs that are free-range. And the people that live here and that produce food understand that food that is grown under high-quality circumstances produces high-energy food, and that produces people that are happy. And the real conspiracy, a corporate conspiracy to degrade the food supply, has definitely been about degrading human consciousness to make people less aware by feeding them food that contains less awareness. You can only refine out the light from a substance that it contains within it. If it's a Twinkie, it probably contains a tiny fraction of light and then a lot of stuff that's not light. However, a fresh new apple off the tree contains a lot of light. It is time to end this broadcast. Thank you so much for being with me as we prepare consciousness for the birth of a new dimension.